In front of me today is one of the best-selling crossovers in America. This is my mom's 2020 Subaru Crosstrek 2.0i Premium, and I'm going to be giving you a tour of it and doing a road test at the end. Now you may have noticed I called this thing a crossover. This is actually a wagon, but Subaru refuses to call these things wagons, including the Outback. But this is technically a wagon. It is a Subaru Impreza wagon, lifted up off the ground with 8.7 inches of ground clearance, and that has made it one of the best-selling small, compact crossovers in America. Now, Subaru has always been a very unique car manufacturer, being super small, but Subarus are also unique in other ways, especially with their engines. This is a 2-liter, horizontally opposed boxer engine. It makes 152 horsepower and 148 pound-feet of torque, mated to either a 6-speed manual or, as this car has here, the Lineartronic CVT, and it's also available with the 2.5 liter version of this engine, which makes about 182 horsepower. This engine is the FB20D, and the 2.5 liter is the FB25D. Even that ladybug likes Subarus. And if you don't know what a horizontally opposed engine is, or a boxer engine, there are 2 pistons on either side. That means 2 separate blocks and 2 separate heads and 2 separate valve covers. And there are 2 pistons on the left, 2 pistons on the right, and the piston heads are facing that way. They are 90 degrees to the frame rails of the car, and this allows the car to have a really low center of gravity even with an 8.7 inch ground clearance, and makes the car handle like it's on rails, especially with the symmetrical all-wheel drive system that all Subarus have as standard. Now you'll see later when I actually take this thing out on the road and test it exactly what the symmetrical all-wheel drive system is all about, but first I'll show you the interior. Now, in order to get inside of the Crosstrek, there are multiple ways if you have the smart key access system like I have here. The base model and some of the premium models do have a physical ignition key. This one does have the smart key access system. So all you have to do is click the Subaru button to unlock. Or you could use the touch sensor behind the handle, just like a lot of Toyota products. It actually is a Denso system. So it does have unlock and lock. And for the key fob, if you have the My Subaru app and the Starlink connectivity, you can actually remote start the car with the key fob and through an app on the phone. And all Subarus do have alarms. So if you click the lock button 3 times, it does sound the alarm. And this is actually the best way to protect your Subaru. But we'll go ahead and unlock it. I'll actually use the touch handle here. And we'll step inside. Now, having 8.7 inches of ground clearance gives you a much easier step-in height than the Impreza, as the Impreza sits 5 inches off the ground. So it's a lot easier for people to get into this car, and if you're older, it's easier for the older folks to get in here too. So as I said earlier, this one has the push button start, so all you have to do, put your foot on the brake if you have the CVT, or your foot on the clutch if you have a manual, and press the start button to go. And what you're hearing there is the 2-liter FB20D engine. A very industrial sounding engine. And being a direct injected engine, it does keep the revs up a little bit when it first starts up, even when it's warm outside. Now when you come to shut the door, the boxer engine rumble all of a sudden disappears. Completely quiet in here for the most part. When those revs are up, you can still hear a bit of the engine, but now you don't hear it as much. Coming over to the door panel, base and premium models will give you this faux carbon fiber plastic accent, a matte black plastic door handle. Limited models will give you a brushed finish here with a chrome metal door handle. Down here you have your mirror controls for your large mirrors with blind spot integration. Lock, unlock. The front two windows are express up down. The rear windows are not. You have a child lockout protector, a handle, a padded armrest that's more of an injection molded plastic. Down here you have some blank switches if you had an upgraded model, but on the premium and the base you get a traction control off button, auto start stop off, and a blind spot monitoring off button. Coming to the gauge cluster, you have a trip reset button and these three buttons down here which control various menus inside of this display. So we like to have it on the instantaneous gas mileage as well as the fuel range. Coming over to the steering wheel, it's a nice leather wrapped wheel. You get this on the premium and up, and it has some orange stitching down here. If you get a Crosstrek Sport, these sections are a dark gray finish and an orange yellow color on the bottom. Come over to your radio controls. You have a volume up down, seek track forward backward, a source button which allows you to change between AM, FM, Bluetooth, and your info button which changes some information up there. And over here you have your cruise controls for the eyesight system, which I'll get into more later on the test drive. Over here you have your automatic climate control. It is single zone automatic climate. I believe on this generation you cannot get dual zone climate control. Lineartronic CVT models do have paddle shifters and a gear selector down here with a manual shiftability, which is not usable with this stick. It's actually by the paddles with 8 simulated fake gears, which I'll talk about later on the test drive because this Lineartronic CVT is quite interesting. You do have a manual parking brake. The new 2024 models have electronic parking brakes, so it's nice that for quite a while Subaru sold cars with physical parking brakes, and you can still get these at some dealerships at a discounted price, at least the 2023 models, because some dealers still have not sold these. The sunroof. Now, all premium models, for the most part, do have a sunroof. All the limiteds, all the sports have a sunroof. And you could either tilt, like what I have it in here, which is my favorite position when driving, or slide. Now, it is an automatic slider, and if you actually have the shade over it, and you hit open on slide, it does pull the sunshade back with it. It is not a pano roof. It is just a regular moon roof. I'm actually going to leave this open because I did just wash the car and I'm not rolling the windows down. And coming down to your radio, this is a 6.1 inch touchscreen display. It really should be bigger, but there was an optional 8 inch touchscreen on the limited models. And this has wired Apple CarPlay and wired Android Auto. Unfortunately, it does not have wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. You'd have to get some sort of adapter, and Android Auto works great. You may see it on the test drive. If not, I'll put up a picture now of what the Android Auto looks like. And I do have a couple complaints with the Android Auto system. Maybe it's just because I have a modded premium version of Spotify on my phone, a Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, but Spotify does not work in Android Auto for me, so I use the regular Bluetooth media. The only problem is, using the regular Bluetooth media in this car, it does not work with Android Auto. It's one or the other, so I either listen to my music and get no navigation, or get navigation and not listen to music. I can still listen to the radio though when you have Android Auto on, which is nice, which means I can listen to AM, FM, and satellite radio. Coming down here are nice hard buttons, all surrounded in piano black, which looks nice for the first 5 minutes of ownership and the last 5 minutes when you clean it up and eventually sell the car, because anytime in between you are constantly touching the screen or touching the buttons down here, and it's covered in fingerprints. And I did try my best to clean it, and I haven't really touched it much, and it's already dusty. So that's another thing with piano black as well, is it does get dusty. And newer models with the dual 7-inch screens or the 11.6-inch big system doesn't have any issues with that since they made it all matte black around. And I'm sure someone in the aftermarket has made matte black coverings for these, but I've yet to be able to find one in the searching I've done. So if you really don't like piano black, keep this in mind. But actually using the infotainment system is nice. If I go to radio, I can turn this up, but I'm not going to turn it up loud, that loud, because I don't want to get copyrighted. But you do have AM, FM with, I believe, 12 presets, or 16 presets. 18 presets, so I had that wrong, for both AM, FM, and Sirius XM satellite radio, which doesn't work right now because the car is about 4 years old. Clicking the home button just takes you home. You have the My Subaru pairing, which allows you to use your smartphone to do things like remote start the car. You have Starlink, which Starlink is an incredible system, as Subaru really does care about your safety, especially with the eyesight system up here, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Starlink is if you get into a car crash or your car breaks down, there's an SOS button up here that you can use, or if you get into a crash, it'll automatically use satellites to call emergency services to your location, even when you're in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service. So if you crash in the middle of nowhere and you don't have cell phone service, the car will use satellites to bring emergency services to your location and give them longitude and latitude coordinates. The only thing is that Starlink is quite expensive. I'll put pricing for it in the description down below, but I believe it's like $100 a year for like the one that everybody gets, because I think there's 2 different packages for it, which is quite expensive. However, it is kind of cheap insurance, and that only comes out to less than $10 a month, so it is worth it if safety is 100% your top priority. And speaking of safety, I'm actually going to go over some of the safety features in this car when I move over to the back seat, because it does have quite a lot to help you. Making our way to the back seat, I would like to note these seats. They are 6-way adjustable. Forward, backward, height, up, down, recline. There is no lumbar support, but you do get ratcheting headrests, which newer models don't have. So when I drive it, I like to have it on this 3rd click, but it's only for the front headrest that you're able to ratchet, and you do have height adjustable seat belts. Now moving on to the back, something that you do need to have set up after opening the front doors. If you want to open any of the other doors, you actually need to go into a setting to turn that on with the smart key. Otherwise, you just go here and press the unlock button. And the car will beep a couple times to let you know that it's lost detection of the smart key. So you can go to the back. And before we enter the vehicle, I'd like to tell you some of the safety features. The special latch down here is one of them. There's a big metal solid hook and a special latch in here. And what that does is if somebody were to T-bone you, this will lock up against this and keep the rear doors completely shut. You cannot open them from the inside or the outside, to my knowledge, which is important in cases like a rollover, so passengers don't fly out of your car, and also so the car stays really strong. So basically you have a huge frame and then just those 2 doors, and it's great for crash protection in a rollover situation, because there's a chance the car may not even roll over, because those doors will help hold the car down to the ground, including the boxer engine, which is another safety feature that I'll talk about right before the road test. But getting in the back seat, see, the back seat's fairly big. You do have one map pocket there, and upon shutting the door, it is fairly comfortable back here. Now I'm about 5'7", and if I zoom out here, I have plenty of leg room sitting behind myself, and above my head I have about like maybe 5 inches left, which for a compact car is not that bad. A lot of the materials do carry over. A nice padded armrest, your windows, which are not express windows unfortunately, the door handle and the carbon fiber trim stay in place. You do not get a center armrest on the Premium. I believe only the Sport and Limited gives you that. You do not get ratcheting headrest either. You do get 2 grab handles on either side and a coat hook. As you can see the spot where they would have put a sunroof but chose not to. I think in other world markets you do get a pano roof option, and it takes up the whole section here. Instead, you get a map light, which Subaru does sell LED light kits for. $100 LED kits. You can actually have them installed at the dealer right before delivery of your brand new Subaru, and it'll do LED lighting throughout the entire interior, and I believe the license plate lights as well, but it won't do your turn signals or your headlights. For that, you do have to get a limited model that will have LED headlights and fog lights. Coming down here, you would have a set of chargers here. However, being a Premium, you don't have any. And you do get some bottle holders down here. So technically, there are cup holders in the back. You just have to stick any bottles or drinks down here. Coming to the back of the Crosstrek, you do have a very light hatch that is hydraulically assisted, and it just opens itself up. A power hatch I don't believe is available on the Crosstrek. Now you can see with all my camera gear inside, there is plenty of room to spare. I believe this is 14.5 cubic feet of cargo space. You do get a little cargo shelf here, which I did not put on properly. There you go. Now it's on. And now it's off. Now, one thing that I will note, for anybody with children, if you're going to put child seats in the vehicle, I would advise you don't put them in the middle of the seat, because the seat belt does come off from the side here instead of from the ceiling, which typically it's better if it comes from the ceiling, in certain cars anyway. But in the Impreza and the Crosstrek, it does come from the side pillar here, and there are little routing holes here to make sure that the seat belt doesn't get in the way when you fold these back seats down. Now, the Crosstrek does have a decent sized gas tank, and it does take 87 octane fuel. Its fuel economy ratings, I believe, are 25 in the city and 35 on the highway for the Lineartronic CVT model, and for the 6-speed manual is 23 in the city and 33 on the highway. And the last safety feature I will tell you about is the horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine. Now, the reason that this is so safe is because the front of the engine sits higher than the back of the engine. Now, this doesn't seem like much, however, it is important, because if you get into a front end collision that's hard enough, what will happen is the back end of the engine will go lower and slip under the dashboard, almost kind of like it's going under the car, which is good because it won't push the firewall and the pedal box and the dashboard into the interior, which is important to the interior occupants. Go ahead, take it out on the road and see how it does. But first, let's get an exhaust clip. So let's go ahead and take the Crosstrek on a road test. So, the Crosstrek is currently sitting at 42,000 miles, and my mom bought this car just a couple months ago. She bought it on Super Bowl Sunday with about 39,000 miles on it. So the car has had about 2,500 to 3,000 miles put on it since we got it, and it's been taken quite a lot of places already, and has already gotten dirty a few times. But after 40,000 miles in 4 years, let's see how the engine's held up. I'm going to put it in sport mode. You have auto start top on. I'll turn that off. And we're going to do a brake torque here. Pretty responsive, and then there's 60. So the Lineartronic CVT was holding it redline. Now, the CVT does kind of have a split personality. So in some instances, when you're at a dead stop and you have a light load on the engine, it will hold the revs, because it is assuming that you want max power, so it'll hold the revs right at 6,250 RPM, which is its red line on the 2-liter. The 2.5 liters is 6,000 RPM red line, but it will hold its gears because it assumes full power. Now, if you're already rolling, or you do a slight roll onto the throttle from a stop, it won't hold gears and it'll fake shift. Like this. And go around that thing. Which has the eyesight system going off because I just moved around an obstacle in the road. So eyesight is doing its job. I'm going to make a U-turn, and I am going to do a couple more 0 to 60s. So we'll stop right here, and I will just do a regular acceleration, and we'll go. A lot quicker off the line, actually. So that was 60. So it actually felt a little quicker that time. However, when it does vary the ratios, it does take longer to get up to speed, by like a couple tenths of a second. Now, the reason they do this, obviously, is because us enthusiasts don't like the sound of a whiny, drony 4-cylinder. However, boxer engines have a really nice rumble, and so I actually don't mind how the CVT sounds when it sits at redline. I think it sounds quite cool. But I'll go into manual, try out the paddles, which don't hold redline, so it will automatically upshift at redline and auto downshift, which would make sense. And so I'll move into this lane so I don't run into the obstacle, put it in first gear, and go. Accidental upshift into third when it upshifted itself into second, so I did kind of double shifted. So there are 8 gears, and it only lets you go up to 7th gear, only lets you access 8th gear in above 60 miles an hour. Go. I felt like I was going to spin the tires. Yeah, so it does shift still. So it really does have a split personality, and it really only does do it when you have some engine load before you take off. But let's go ahead and get this thing out towards the highway, and I'll give you a little bit of how it feels in the city as well. I'm here to approach a stoplight. I will use the paddles to engine brake. to manual. Don't want to hit anything in the road. I know it's all-wheel drive and it's a Subaru and I could run over these things. But if it was a Subaru with a little more age, maybe I would do that, but not this car. It's too nice to drive it over stuff like that for now. Maybe when it gets more broken in, even though this is already 40,000 miles, so. All-wheel drive system handy, right? We'll do a half throttle pull. Actually, we'll go into manual. We'll try X mode 2. Oh, it takes off quicker. That was an accidental double shift, but it actually just pulled just fine. It does automatically turn off X mode, but it does seem to pick up a little bit quicker. So it does seem to make a difference. It had a little more grip, because it did have a tiny bit of wheel spin back there with one of the 0 to 60s I did. Coming to a stop, super smooth. The brakes feel fantastic. Some cars' brakes don't feel all that good, but these brakes are nice and linear. And the throttle pedal is just the perfect distance. It is a little touchy though sometimes. So like when I'm pushing the car like 8/10, like I did back there, it's obviously nice to have a touchy throttle pedal, but in your day-to-day situations, even sport mode sometimes is like unusable. Like if you're in the city, sometimes it's even too much because the CVT is so responsive. It's very touchy from a stop. It is very touchy from a stop, and this guy in a Tucson is flying behind me. Oh, he was close to me. I'll inch up a little bit because I am a little scared of people getting close to me. One thing about auto start stop that I don't like is that it does shut down your air conditioning, which is kind of annoying because it does have a physical AC compressor. Makes a little on ramp here. No, my traditional on ramp. Leave it in intelligent mode. And we'll floor it. It has plenty of get up and go. Like, you don't need the 2.5 liter. You really don't. Even up at elevation, this car does really well. The CVT does well. And the guy in the Accord doesn't know what he's doing. And he flipped off the Jeep driver. Oh, I'm leaving that in the video. Unless he's flipping off me for no reason. Do a little acceleration here. Use the paddles too. Being a taller car with bigger tires, there is some road noise that comes in. It's not too terrible, but if you drive on the highway a lot, an Impreza is probably your better option because you will get better gas mileage with it as well, being lower to the ground. It does let me select 8th gear, and it is only turning about 2,000 RPMs. Now when you put it into drive, it does seem to keep its full ratio. It doesn't actually make another fake gear. Now the car is steering itself, which it kind of automatically does on its own. And I'm not its biggest fan because it just did it for me, and I'm trying to keep the car in a straight line myself. Going around 75, 80 here at the flow of traffic, I mean, it does it really well. It's easy to keep the car in control. Even with these scenes on our California freeways, and just these freeways in general, really choppy, especially down here by the port, but it does a really good job at staying stable. So I'm sitting over here in the right lane. And it's not my exit. I'm going to take my usual exit, the one I always take in my videos. You see, it is doing lane assist, kind of, not really, not doing the best job at it. But let's go ahead and set is slowing down. That's nice. The adaptive cruise control really does do a good job at slowing down and speeding up for you. There is a box truck and an Outback in front of me. Now I need to override the system this time because the car wanted to cut in front of the Outback. I have no idea. And we'll just set the feature back on. And I'll also have a separate 0 to 60 video online as well, where I test every possible combination to do a 0 to 60 in this car. Floor and turn, and it holds a grip. Acceleration. I was at 80 by the time I hit the freeway, so this thing's quick enough. And I know that was downhill, but it does just fine. We're just sitting on the freeway here, 49 miles per gallon. And when we actually picked up this car, our salesman drives a 2.5 liter Sport, and says that on his round trip to work gets about 35, almost 40 miles per gallon sometimes on a 2.5 liter. So on a 2 liter, I'm not really surprised by this 49 miles per gallon number. So slow down, you might be listening to brake lights on the screen. Turn cruise control back off. So to wrap up the review on the Crosstrek, would I recommend you buy one? Absolutely. There's a reason this car is one of the best-selling compact crossovers in the United States, wagons, because it is so good. It feels durable. You know, these engines are built to last. These CVTs, if you take care of them and do fluid changes on time, which I believe is around 66,000 miles. About 30,000 if you're towing, because this car can tow about 1,500 pounds. These cars can go 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles in ease, and I honestly recommend this over like a Toyota or a Honda, just because those two brands have quality that's going down. So overall, this is a good engine, and I'm not concerned about quality going down anytime soon. So I'd highly recommend, if you're in the market for a safe and reliable vehicle at a good price, this is it right here. The Crosstrek and the Impreza is exactly where it's at. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There'll be a 0 to 60 video posted. It'll probably be out when this video comes out, probably around the same time. So I'll put a link in the description down below for that. If you like my videos, you can like if you want. Subscribing would be helpful, but you don't have to if you don't want to, unless you really like my videos. And I'll see you in the next video, which will probably be some sort of update on the Fiat, because I haven't made a video on that in a while. So stay tuned for more. I find it kind of ironic that person has safety written on their back window, but at the same time they just cut me off. About your safety, huh? At least you have your turn signals on there. So much for riding safety on your car when you drive like that. Wow. Someone should put that on radio.